Well, the Bears have had issues on the offensive line, and before we get into specifically what's going on with Justin Fields, I'm curious on what you're seeing from the protection for Justin Fields in the Bears offensive line.
Yeah, so one of the notes I walked away from this game is they got to get ready because people are going to blitz them like crazy because the Giants got home so much. And the other thing, which is kind of more of a technical change, we've got to get out of what we call like center head pop. So the Bears, what they're doing is their center looks between his legs, right? He waits for Justin to pick his leg up. This is when they're on the road. When Justin picks his leg up, boom, he pops up his head and he snaps the ball. That is not good with a rookie, or not a rookie, but a young quarterback, because the center missed at least 2 blitz pickups from depth, meaning, hey, we had a Mike coming from at least 4 yards, right? That we didn't account for, because guess where our eyes are before the snap? They're under our legs, right? So we need our center to have his hand up. They need to transition to what's called like a guard tap that you guys see a lot of, where the guard is actually the person looking back and then he taps the center. So that's like a technical note that the Bears have to change when they're on the road, because we had 2 run-throughs that were unacceptable. Losing a left guard sucks because they're already losing one-on-one matchups right now up front. I do want to say this, is there were 2 times on tape that Justin started to scramble when the pocket was clean and he ran into pressure. So those are the kind of things where it's like, naturally as a quarterback, you probably start to feel like, okay, I got someone on me, when really I don't, because you've been under duress all day. So the protection, I do think, the first time I came on here, we talked a lot about what do the Eagles do different? Well, they do a lot of run and play action. And honestly, we saw a lot of that against the Giants, and we were efficient with it. The Bears were. And I do think they were protecting pretty well in that run and play action aspect of it. So I do think they're protecting him better than when we first started talking, right? 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. So I do think the protection's better. Losing their left guard definitely hurts.
Tim, what do you think, though, about the fact that the passes that Fields was able to complete, and I point out, say, the bomb to Darnell Mooney for 56 yards in the first half.
Yep.
That's max protect. They're only sending 2 receivers there. He's getting a lot of help. Most of the protection that he had for his completions was when there was a guard center double team on one singular down lineman. So I do think there is an issue there when it comes to how he's reading based on what he knows is in front of him on the line.
Yeah, I think it's a little, I have a little different take on that, of that. I think a lot of them, so when you just have max protect, right, and you have the 2 guys in the routes, you're in pure progression. We talked about this last week before. Pure progression is when no matter what, hey, I'm reading from the post is my first route. Boom, I'm getting to my deep over. That's my second route if you're in max pro, right? Usually you're going to sneak the back out after, and that would be our third progression. My take on it is I don't think it has anything to do with if they're in max protect or not. And I think it has a lot to do with the plays that they're in pure progression. PFF needs a stat of what is a quarterback's completion percentage when he's in pure progression versus PSL, because Justin Fields would be, in my opinion, completing like 70% of his passes right now when he has a pure progression look. I don't know if you guys remember, there was a big 3rd down throw he had on a crosser late in the game. It was in the 3rd quarter. He hits the crosser, right? The slot receiver's on a crosser. He's crossing the field. It's a pure progression play. He starts with his eyes to what we would call a Harvey route, which is where you get 15 yards and then right back down your stem. So a curl is towards the quarterback, comebacks toward the sideline. Harvey, boom, we come right down our stem. Harvey's not there. Boom, he resets his feet and he drills the crosser. The reason he was playing so efficient there was a pure progression play. Let's fast forward, or not fast forward, but rewind to the first quarter, their first red zone trip, okay? He hangs on. He's trying to throw the corner route, okay? We end up taking a sack, which stinks, right? Or he doesn't take a sack, but he throws it out the back of the end zone. Well, that's a PSL, meaning, hey, pick your side, right? Dealer's choice based on what you think matchup-wise. And guess who was open? The other corner. Well, it doesn't make sense to have this kid who we're trying to get caught up to the NFL, like every young quarterback is, and then we're throwing PSLs to him in the red zone. But in between the 20s, we've got him working pure progressions, like you talked about, the Mooney shot for 56 yards, and then we hit the crosser. We hit that very first, I want to say it was either first or second play of the game, the 20-yard read route that sits over the ball. He comes alive and rips a BB, right? So to me, there's a lot of stuff where when we have this kid and we know, hey, man, we want you ripping pure progressions, that he does a great job. It's those PSLs that I just think we got to you're not going to get rid of every single one of them, but we have to minimize it if he's going to be effective in the near term.
Tim, I want to talk about the play in the red zone where we see Darnell Mooney be open and Fields doesn't see him. But before I get your thoughts on it, I want you to hear what Matt Eberflus said about that play. And then I'm curious on what your take is going to be after you take a listen to this.
Yeah, that's a very basic play. That's just, vertical, four vertical play. And Mooney on that one's actually supposed to be bending across the formation. He's supposed to be bending across. He was not supposed to go vertical. So I think that kind of caught him off guard a little bit. But he certainly had time on that. Yeah, he certainly had time and could have rode the pocket there a little bit more. But he decided to take it because what we were telling him is that to take the check down or run on that when they're in that defense.
Okay, so there's a bigger problem here that we should address at some point about Darnell Mooney and how many times already this year that he's talked about running the wrong routes. But before we get to that, I understand the concept of Justin maybe short-circuiting a little bit because Mooney runs the wrong route. And by the time he puts it together that there's an open player there, he just goes out the back door and just says, screw it, I'm just going to try and run and get these yards because this is all screwed up. I'm curious on how you would teach that. Like, how would you use that as a teaching video for Justin to keep his eyes down the field, even if a guy is running the wrong route?
Yeah, it's a really good answer from Coach. So here's my take on it, right? When you have a receiver who busts his route, it depends on how bad it is, right? So what he's talking about is the guy's supposed to be bending across the field and instead he keeps it vertical. Well, there's our vertical spacing, right? So it's gone. So in terms of that specific decision, like in a vacuum, good decision to get in a scramble drill, right? And I'm guessing what he was saying was when they were in that defense, I'm guessing they were telling him any sort of man coverage, feel free to run because guess what? When they're in man, back is to you, right? So Justin can go and create and make a play. So I'm guessing that's what factored into that specific decision. In terms of the teaching tape for Justin, I'm gonna be honest with you, there isn't one, right? The teaching tape is you put that up in the team meeting and you MF Mooney because you're costing everyone by deciding to try to get open, right? And obviously I'm talking from a quarterback's perspective who has been burned by this a lot and gets super salty about it. But as a receiver, when you're covered, someone else is open. The point isn't to get you open on every play. The point is to get someone in the play, right? We are a team. It's a team game. You can't just make adjustments. So in terms of like, can Justin learn from bust routes? Yes, but it depends on what it is. An example of that would be if instead of being in 3x1 4 verts or hey, where you're supposed to bend across the formation, if it was just 2x2 and instead of taking a vertical, he were to sit, not as impactful on the play. Still matters, but not as impactful. So what we would want Justin to do there is speed read it, which means, hey, okay, you see that he busted, automatically get off him and speed to your second, right? Get to your second progression, or if Mooney was second, get to your third, whatever it be, speed read, skip him. So those are kind of the way you would coach that. But honestly, like the biggest thing is you need to address it. You need to address it in the receiver room first, right? The first time someone messes up, address it internally in their position group. The second time you have it, you need to, in the team meeting, flip that thing up as one of the 5 clips, and you've got to get after somebody and make sure this never happens again.
I want to zoom out a little bit here to not just what happens after the snap, but pre-snap. Because I feel like what we're talking about a lot right now is based on what your defense gives you. It's during the play. But how much of this can be mitigated pre-snap? Because you hear about quarterbacks saying they know where they're going to go with that ball. They have a plan pre-snap. It's only when they have to adjust do they make the other adjustments.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of that has to do with how early they are in this offense. So, if you look at Rodgers, right? Rodgers, the pre-snap king, right? Whether they, kick motion across and he gets man zone, they put the back out, whatever it be for them to get man zone indicators. And, he's the king of, hey, I'm going to eliminate these two, get to my third progression. But that wasn't even happening for him. Aaron Rodgers at the time, Super Bowl champion, when they switched to a similar style offense, right? Early on with LaFleur. So to me, it's like, yeah, I would love to get him to where he is, hey, okay, this guy's dead pre-snap, or this is where I got to go pre-snap. The reality is when, we have Russell Wilson struggling with it in Denver right now. We had Rodgers struggle with it. When we have Super Bowl champion guys who've been in the league for 10 years struggling with pre-snap processing in a new system, it's dang near impossible for me to then get on here and tell you guys, who needs to do it though? A kid who's in his second or third year in the league, right? Like those are guys that that we're just trying to make sure their eyes are in the right spot post snap. We're trying to make sure, we don't have these protection busts. Like, the run through that we had protection wise is on the center, but it's also on Justin, because if Justin's setting the protection, he didn't turn them the right way, meaning, hey, we're either sliding right or sliding left, and then you get a 3-on-2 or 4-on-3, depending on how you slide. So, I would love to get him to that point. The reality is I don't think that happens in this first year with the offense. I think that would be something that we would have to circle back to come week 3, week 4 next year. If we're not getting rid of guys pre-snap, then it's a giant issue.
But I also want to ask you a follow-up to that as well. And the reason I ask it is because, did you see the play? It was a safety blitz against the Texans, where in that game, it was the fourth quarter, Fields motions for Cole Kmet, who was covering Petrie, the safety at the time, who ended up coming in off the blitz unchecked. At that point, those two are facing against each other. So theoretically, Petrie's covered. Fields motions for Kmet to go to the other side. So that's motion. Then Petrie's left unchecked. Depending on which offense, it's either your center calling protection or that's your quarterback. That's a sack. We're talking about that more if Roquan Smith doesn't have the pick 6 that helps seal the game. In that instance, what did you see, and whose responsibility is that supposed to be as far as another pre-snap recognition? And we're talking about blitz here. I think that situation might come up again.
Yeah, a lot of it's going to be, I think that's a great question for the coach of, hey, who is your mic declaration? Because whoever's setting the mic and setting protection in this offense is in reality accountable for that person. And then usually it's a back scan. So if you're talking about safeties or corners, it's usually a back. Hey, the back is going to scan from our Sam to strong safety to corner, right? Like, hey, we call them like force or like 4 players, like, hey, 4 being the secondary. If they come weak or they come strong, that's going to be a back scanning to them. So in reality, specific plays in terms of, hey, we kick the motion, one safety rolls and the other safety walks up and, he's near the line. He ends up being the guy who comes free. Likely a back that missed the pickup, or likely on Justin for not realizing that the strong safety and Sam were additional add-ins on the same play.
I wanted to ask you about the defense. I know that you're our quarterback guy, but I know how you watch tape. I'm terrified of what might happen to the Bears this week against the Vikings because of how effectively teams have been able to run play action and boot action against them. And when I look at the offensive weapons that the Vikings have, knowing that they have a really good back in Dalvin Cook and 2 great receivers, I can see Kirk Cousins eating off of that all day with those guys. What went wrong, and why did it take so long for the Bears to correct where their eyes were when it came to the way that Daniel Jones was using a ball fake?
Man, that's such a good point too with the Vikings coming up. Listen, and the Vikings are a real threat too, what you're saying, because of who they now have as their head coach and the way he schemes stuff up. And week 1, when the Vikings, their coming out party against the Packers was like insane, right? I do think it's really hard to coach. The Bears are a run-first offense. So let's talk about when we're doing best on best at practice. The Bears are a run-first offense right now, and I agree with the decision to be a run-first offense. As a defender, when in your building we're run first, it's really hard to not respect the run in run action and play action, right? So that's where it's like, I do think Chicago's especially susceptible because like their offensive identity is built around running the football. So then you're used to seeing that, right? Week in and week out from your offense. So then you tend to play the run first even more. The biggest way to mitigate it is probably going to be formationally, right? I have to imagine Minnesota, I don't have any numbers on this, but I have to imagine like every offense, they have some plays that, their play action percentage is higher out of this formation than their actual run game. And then from there, it's making smart bets and realizing like, listen, man, if I'm a little late to the hole, it costs me 4 yards. Where if I'm a little late to getting under the hook against Justin Jefferson, he can go ahead and catch that thing at 12 and house it, right? So that's where, as a D coordinator, you really have to make sure these guys, formation recognition will be more important this week than it probably will be, for them until they see maybe the Packers again or whenever they circle back to the Vikings. So it's a valid point of what they're going to have to face. And I would tell you the only way they can really mitigate it is through, formation recognition and then playing the percentages smartly in terms of what is their actual run game percentage versus play action and run action when they're in this formation.
Tim, as always, we really appreciate it. We learn so much when you're on the air, and the listeners appreciate it as well. Thank you so much.
I appreciate y'all. Y'all are the best.